Well, my name is James Wendell Reid, which in the Hebrew means replacement wandering in the swamp. I was born in Jackson, Mississippi. My dad was what was considered in those days a Baptist home missionary. And so we did wander around all the time. He started churches in Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. I can remember times when we'd be going to church. He wasn't always pastoring a church, but sometimes we would be going to other churches, attending. And on the way there, he'd be schooling us on Baptist doctrine, teaching. And I can remember many times thinking, I don't agree with that. Of course, you didn't say that to my dad because he was very strict about the way he believed things and expected us to believe it the way he believed it. So I continued that way. And then I began to wander around in different ways and finally found the Lord fully when I was the age of 21 and joined the Assemblies of God Church, became a licensed preacher, never pastored a church. Well, I did pastor a church for a brief period of time that was on its way of closing in Mississippi. But we have traveled my family and I have traveled all over Mississippi and Louisiana and lived in Texas too. So we've been wandering around the swamp quite a long time. Then I decided to go back to school. I felt God leading me back to schools so I went to USM, and there's where I first encountered the First United Methodist Church. It was actually announced in one of my classes at college. The professor there recommended that we go basically on the fact that the way the pastor presented, his name was Dr. James McCormick, presented his sermons. He said how wonderfully he did things, and we might want to check that out. And I did, and we continued to go. And I began to find some camaraderie there. And then I graduated, but my wife was also going to school at that time too. And we both graduated and ended up in Covington, Louisiana, looking for a church. As I was growing up, my dad kind of gave us the impression that if a person really cared for your soul, then they would be aggressive toward getting you into following Christ with whatever threats or whatever means they could. Well, and that made me afraid of Methodists because they were always so nice. And I felt like the niceness meant that they really didn't care what happened to me. But I realized after going to St. Timothy on the North Shore that it wasn't about that. It was that they really lived out grace, and I began to be attracted, and God began to call me into the Methodist Church. I had been pastoring I had been preaching in the Assemblies of God for a while. I was associate pastor. I helped start a church in Covington, Louisiana as an associate pastor. And so as I began to receive the calling to United Methodist Church, I had a lot of concerns, but as I prayed, God began to teach me, show me that this definitely was the path he wanted me to go. So thanks to Dr. Larry Madden, I consulted him, and I had heard something about the possibility of being the laity being involved in church ministry of different kinds. So I talked to Larry Madden about, what I thought it was a lay preacher somewhere, and he said he didn't know anything about being a lay preacher. Or, all he knew was about lay pastor. And he described that, and I said, well, okay, so I'll try that. And I applied, talked to the PPR committee, and they brought me into and interviewed me and recommended me for ministry. And then after about 2 years into my first appointment, which was a part-time appointment because I was teaching Spanish in Washington Parish, I realized what I've been looking for was being a lay speaker. And I thought, how did I end up being a local pastor, being appointed a pastor? But it was too late. I was already hooked, and I wanted more. And I began to talk to my district superintendent about full-time appointment, which my first full-time appointment was at Colfax in Central. Had never heard of it. Matter of fact, I think there was only one place I've ever been that prior to being sent there, I had ever heard of it. And that was Tallulah. But other places, they sent me places that I'd say, where? And of course, I had to look it up on the map and talk about it, look into it. So in Colfax, then I had my first annual conference. I wasn't able to go to annual conference during my part-time preaching because I had to do other things when I was not teaching. And so my first annual conference, I'm standing up there on the top bleachers there on the left of the podium, and worshiping in the opening worship service, and look out across this where these people are and worshiping, and my heart begins to be filled with joy and understand and peace. And the Lord spoke to me and said, "You have come home." And wow, and it felt like home from that point forward. And it was after I began to learn what Wesleyan teaching is and Methodist polity and all that I came to realize that I've always been a Methodist. I was born a Methodist into a Baptist household. And then I realized that I truly had come home, and it has been like home, where I could be who I am, question, grow, see the diversity. My experience would go into the first board of ministry. The thing I pointed out to them was there was an African American, a woman, former Pentecostal, and a man with Einstein hair. And I looked around and I pointed this out and said, I know that I'm in the right place because of this diversity that I'm looking at. And so I was so excited about that. And that's how I got into becoming a Methodist pastor. It's been quite a journey, and it's continued to be a journey within my home. And I realized at a certain point, that I had this, at times you get tempted to like want to settle down and be in one place, especially when you got a family. And the Lord reminded me that where he told me I was at home was in the annual conference, not at a particular church. And so I realized the fact that I was home in the annual conference, and I've grown. And yeah, it's like the Jesus told the disciples when they were concerned about what's going to happen to them because they left everything to go to follow him. And he said, well, there's no one who hasn't left father, mother, sisters, brothers, houses, land that won't receive manifold more in this life and with persecution. Yeah, I've had some of that too. And in eternal life, or in the world to come. So and that has been, I've had lots of wonderful homes, and people who cared for me, and people, as I cared for them, and a lot of friends and a lot of enemies as well, but won many of the enemies over through just preaching the gospel and reaching out, and all because of the training and the support I've received from the ministers, the pastors, the friends, the laity in the United Methodist Church. It's been a very, very transforming experience, and it really is home for me. This particular story is my first appointment was Tallahassee and Sun, Louisiana. Is about 16 miles south of Bogalusa, Louisiana, and it was in the heart of KKK country. But the people there were they ministered to everybody in the community. So at Sun, I in Tallahassee, I was visiting around, and right next door to the church in Tallahassee was a couple who lived in a mobile home, a little spot just directly next to the church, the little church. And I went and visited them. I don't remember the name of the husband, but the wife's name was Mary. And they were friendly and nice, and we sat down and talked for a while. And then we prayed, and I left. And then, I don't know, throughout the course of a few weeks, I would just pop by and, knock on the door, and we'd talk a little bit. Then one day, Mary, they invited me in, and Mary told me this story. She said she had seen an article or a letter to the editor in the Times-Picayune by an atheist, and that was talking about his beliefs and the way he understood, and of course denouncing Christianity and God and that whole bit. And she said it made her angry. And then she said she suddenly, it was all she saw a vision of her life in front of her, and what she saw was nothing. And it caused her to be afraid. She understood this was God speaking to her, that she needed to turn toward him. So she said, I did, and now I want to join y'all's church. And so we brought her into the church. And that's, I think just it shows me how God calls people in so many different ways, but in particular that our efforts, small though they may be, God is involved in the lives of us, of people, and drawing them into his grace and loving them and peace. I'm really thankful for my first mentor, Dr. Spiller Milton, everybody calls him Spiller. He taught me how to make everybody happy. And his quote is this. He said, when I first come to the church, there are some that are really happy that I'm there. or have come. And then as I go on, there are those that are happy that I'm there. And then the rest of them are happy when I leave. So pleasing everybody, maybe not all at once, but through the process. So I really appreciate his teaching, his guidance, his friendship. Is a wonderful person. And there are many other wonderful pastors that I've encountered. I could name quite a few. My friends Jeff and Becky Connor, Barry Hookstra, who's no longer with us, Doug Kane, who was my mentor when I came to Colfax, Dr. Don Avery, who was my second DS, my first DS, Larry Carl Rhodes, who just had this way of telling the bald truth in such a way that it was palatable. And he really had been an inspiration for me and a help while I was under his appointment. And Dr. and Larry Miller had been a DS and a friend and a mentor to me as well. And then all the friends that I've come across, Denver Wofford, who was my the first lay leader that I connected with there at Colfax, became a really good friend, and we continued contact over the years through email, discussions back and forth, and really been a great thing. I'm thankful. Those are the people I'm really thankful for. And there and so many more that I couldn't name them all, and those are just the ones that pop off into my mind. But I certainly am appreciative of all the bishops that I've had that have believed in me and continued to appoint me in various places, even places I did not want to go at first, but came to realize that was where I was supposed to be. And that's where not only did I get transformation, but I was hopefully, and I did see at times transformation in the people to whom I was ministering and serving. Above all the people that I would like to thank is my wife, Sarah. She is a mental health counselor. She over the years accumulated more certifications as long as my arm, and she's devoted herself to a career of helping people. She has helped people in more ways than I've ever been able to, and more people than I've been able to, helping them out of alcohol, out of ensnarled family situations, out of abuse, out of self-destruction and things like that. And she's been every time we moved, she's humbly committed herself at the bottom of the pile. At one time, she even worked her way up to director of the program in order to, as we developed it. And then, but every time I got the call to move, we would pray together, and she would recommit to this. And at times, I would have to move. At one time in particular, it was a year and a half before she found a job in our area. So we would commute to meet each other on weekends. And she has been 100% behind me all the way, in encouraging and a help. No better person could ever be like her. She is just wonderful, and I appreciate everything that she's done. I could not have done it without her wisdom, her prayer support, and her encouragement.